Welcome back to this video series where we will be learning the Armenian alphabet with the help of the genealogy of Jesus. After last episode, these were the letters that we ended up learning. In this video, we will finally start learning about the letters that are different between Eastern and Western Armenian, which are these following 10 letters. If you remember from the first episode, when we learned about the letter Aip, the first letter in the Armenian alphabet or the Armenian Aipupen, I mentioned that this letter can either be named Aip or Aib, depending on the dialect. So after this video, you will gain a better understanding of that. Now here's a way to group those letters. Now in this case we have 15 letters grouped into groups of 3. So that would be 5 groups of 3 letters, which would total to 15 letters. Now if you recall, I mentioned that 10 letters are different between Eastern and Western Armenian, but here we have 15 because in each group there will be one letter that is the same between both dialects. It will make more sense why they're grouped that way as we learn them. So these are the letters that we have so far, and we will start with the first group, the P, B, B group, or using English sounds P or B. And we will start with this letter. So here we have the name Bartholomeos, which in English is Bartholomew, like the apostle. Here we have another name, Ropovam, which in English is Rehoboam, from Gospel of Matthew chapter 1 verse 7. Now one thing about pronunciation in Armenian, especially names, most of the time the accent is going to be on the last vowel. For example, Bartholomew would be Bartholomeos or Ropovam. I will repeat this later on and possibly in future videos. Now one thing to notice here, before we identify the Armenian letters in the following name. So now with that, let us identify the Armenian letters and guess this following name. Now for guessing the name, notice how, for example, in the name Bartholomew, we pronounce it as Bartholomeos with a P sound. Likewise, with the name Rehoboam, in Armenian it was pronounced Ropovam, again with a P sound instead of a B sound. This will make more sense once I show you the Eastern Armenian pronunciation. So at the moment, I'm giving you the Western Armenian pronunciation. So pause the video and I will show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Abraham, which translates to Abraham. And with that we will unlock this letter. So put it into your table and let's proceed. Now write the following name from Jesus' lineage in Armenian letters. Now to pick between this letter which gives a P sound and pure which also gives a P sound, look at the translation. So remember how, for example, the name Bartholomew in Western Armenian was Bartholomeos. So for this name that we will write in Armenian letters, Zoropapel. But in English it's Zerubbabel. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 1 verse 13. So pause the video and I will show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Zoropapel. Here we know to use the second letter of the Armenian alphabet, pen, instead of pure because of the discrepancy between the P and the B in other languages. Hopefully you got that, and now let us proceed. So this letter is called pen. That is, using the Western pronunciation. However, in the Eastern dialect, it would be pronounced Ben with a B sound. And now, back to this group. We've covered 2 of them, and the remaining one is this one. So here we have the name Pilibos, which translates to Philip. Now notice here how in the name Philip, it ends with a P sound, but in the Western Armenian pronunciation we use a B sound. Pilibos, with the os at the end, retaining the Greek ending of the name, Pilibos. And if you recall from the first video, the F sound, such as in the name Joseph, in Armenian would be Hovsep. So with that, let us identify the Armenian letters using the Western pronunciation and guess the name. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Boros, which translates to Paul. Hopefully you got that. So this letter in Western Armenian pronounced B, in other languages would be a P sound. And hopefully you got the letter Rad in place of the letter L, which we discussed in the last 2 videos. So now we will unlock this letter, which is called P. But in Eastern, it would be called P. So it's an unaspirated P sound. And with that, we've covered the first group of letters to show the difference between Eastern and Western Armenian pronunciation. So just to review, in Western Armenian, this letter pen gives a P sound, which is equal to the sound that is given by the letter pure, also a P sound. So they're both aspirated Ps. While this letter, B, is a B sound, an aspirated B sound. While in Eastern, the second letter of the Armenian alphabet, Ben, is pronounced with a B. It gives a B sound. While P is shown in English with a P, with the letter P, it is not equal to the P sound given by the letter pure. So pure gives an aspirated P, while P gives an unaspirated P. One tip to produce this sound is to think of starting with the letter B but ending with a P. P. Another hint for getting the unaspirated sounds is to think of English words where these unaspirated letters are preceded by the letter S. For example, spot, speed. So in these cases, the P sound would be less aspirated. Let's also review the names. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned in the first 3 videos, a lot of times in Armenian, the accent is on the last vowel, especially with names, but this will have exceptions with compound words. Now, since we're mostly covering names, the accents will mostly be on the last vowel. So here let us see this name, Bartholomew, in Western Armenian is Bartolomaios. Eastern, Bartolomaios. This name, Rehoboam, in Western Armenian, Robovam. In Eastern, Robovam. The name Abraham, in Western Armenian, Abraham. In Eastern Armenian, Abraham. Name Zerubbabel, in Western Armenian, is Zoropapel. In Eastern Armenian, if I use the same spelling, it would be Zorobabel. However, the Eastern Armenian spelling is actually different for this particular name. Here we have the name Philip, which in Western Armenian is Philippos, while in Eastern Armenian it's Philippos. Then we have the name Paul, in Western Armenian is Boros, in Eastern Armenian it's Boros. With that, we've covered the first group. So we've unlocked all of these 3 letters of that first group. And now, let us check the new words that we have unlocked in the Derunagan Agotk, or the higher mer. We have 2 words, one of which is repeated twice. The first is the word surp, which means holy, as in holy be thy name, which in Armenian is Surp Yeretzi Anunko. And then we have the word vorbes, which means like or as. So in English, let your will be done as it is in heaven. So in English, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In classical Armenian, it would be Yeretzin Gam Ko, Vorbes Hergines Yev Hergri. And then we have Vorbes again here, which has the same meaning. So in English, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. In Armenian, it would be Yev Tog Mez Izbardis Mer, Vorbes Yev Mek Togum Merot Bardabanats. And those are the new words that we've unlocked in the Our Father. How about the Vochchun Kez Mariam? We have one word which we saw in the Lord's Prayer, Surpuhi, from the word Surp, which means holy. But the Uhi from Surpuhi gives it a feminine meaning. So in English, Holy Mary, Mother of God, in Armenian would be Surpuhi Mariam Mairastutu. Now we can cover the second group, the K, G, G group. So here we have the name of the city, Galilia, which in English is Galilee. Now remember, with the letter he, if it's at the end of most words, it is silent. Now with that, let us identify the Armenian letters using Western pronunciation and guess this name. Again, for a hint, look at the word Galilee with a G sound, but in Western Armenian, we said Galilia with a K sound. So pause the video and I will show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Capriel, which in English is Gabriel, like the angel Gabriel. And with that, we've covered the third letter of the Armenian alphabet, which is Kim, producing a K sound. How about the Eastern Armenian pronunciation? I think by now you should be able to guess it and figure out the pattern. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Gim, with a hard G sound as opposed to a J sound. So Gim. And then Western, it's Kim. So here's the group again. We've unlocked 2 out of the 3, and we have this one remaining. Here we have the name Isahag, which translates to Isaac. Here we have the name Yeriagim, which translates to Eliakim, from Gospel of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 13. So let's identify the Armenian letters using Western pronunciation and guess this name. Okay, one hint. Remember, Jesus in Armenian is Jesus. Also, notice the discrepancy between the K sound, whereas in Armenian we use a G sound, specifically in Western Armenian. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Hagop. Hagop, which translates to Jacob, or more commonly known in English as James. And now we've unlocked the third letter of that group. Now write the following name of this evangelist in Armenian letters using the Western pronunciation and guess the name. So this name would be Margos. Margos. Remember, it's a hard G sound. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Margos. Margos, which in English is Mark. Before the next slide, let's review this exception for the letter Hyun when combined with the letter Vo. So when we have this combination, we get the sound U, as in the name Jesus, which means Jesus. Now, write the following name of this evangelist in Armenian letters using Western pronunciation and guess the name. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Rugas. Rugas, which translates to Luke. So this letter is called Gen, giving a G sound, so a hard G sound. But that is with the Western pronunciation. How about the Eastern? So pause the video and guess the Eastern pronunciation, and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Gen. Gen. So this gives us an unaspirated K sound, which I think of as starting with a G sound and ending with a K sound. G, where you can think of English letters where the K is preceded by the letter S, like skate or NASCAR, because in these cases the K will be less aspirated. And with that, we've covered the second group, the K, G, K. So to review, in Western Armenian, this letter is Kim, giving a K sound, which is equal to the K sound from the letter K. However, the letter Gen gives a hard G sound. While in Eastern, this letter is Gim, while this letter is Gen, so close to a K sound, but not equal to the K from the letter K. In this case, Gen would be an unaspirated K, while K would be aspirated. Let's also review the names, or in this case, we have also a name of a city. So Galilee in Western Armenian is Galilia. In Eastern, it's Galilia. The name Gabriel in Western Armenian is Gabriel. In Eastern Armenian, it's Gabriel. The name Isaac in Western Armenian is Isahag. In Eastern, it's Isahag. The name Eliakim in Western Armenian, it's Yeriagim. In Eastern Armenian, it's Yeriakim. The name Jacob, also known as James, in Western Armenian is Hagop. In Eastern Armenian, it's Jacob. The name Mark in Western Armenian is Margos. In Eastern Armenian is Marcos. The name Luke in Western Armenian is Rugas. Eastern Armenian, it's Rukas. And with that, we've covered the second group. So let us see what new words we've unlocked in the Our Father. Okay, we have a bunch. Start with Hergines. So Yergink means heaven. Hergines means of heaven. Or in this case, if we compare it to the English, in heaven. So Our Father who art in heaven, or who is in heaven in Armenian is Hayr vor Hergines yes. We also have the word Arkayutun, which means kingdom. So in English, let your kingdom come, or thy kingdom come. In Armenian is Yegetse Arkayutun ko. We have the word Gamk, which means will, and here we have the word Hergines, which we have already seen, means of heaven. And here we have the word Hergri, which comes from the word Yergir, which means earth. So, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In Armenian is Yegetin Gamko Vorbes Hergines Yev Hergri. Then we have the word Pergia, which means save, in the imperative verb form. So, but save us from evil, or more commonly heard as but deliver us from evil, in Armenian is Al Pergia Zmezi Chare. For the Vochchun Kez Mariam, we have one new word, which is Ganais, which means woman. So Gin means woman in the singular. Ganais in classical Armenian is the plural. So in English, blessed are you among women. In classical Armenian, it is Ornialies tu Iganais. And with that, we can go to the next group, the T group. And we will start with the fourth letter of the alphabet. So here we have the name Tavit. Tavit, which in English is David. Here we have the name Huta. Huta, which translates to Judah. Now identify the Armenian letters using Western pronunciation and guess this name. Again, for the hint, Notice how with the name David, which starts with a D sound, for Western Armenian we use the T sound. And then the name Judah, the D is replaced with a T sound. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Atam. Atam, which translates to Adam. So with that, we've covered this letter. Make sure to put it into your table and let us proceed. Now write the following name of this apostle in Armenian letters using Western pronunciation. And so the name is Andreas. Andreas. Now to pick between this letter or the letter To, which both give a T sound in Western Armenian, look at the translation, which is Andrew. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Andreas. Andreas. Now, let us repeat this exercise with another name. Again, a name of an apostle. So we're going to write it in Armenian letters with Western pronunciation. And the name is Tateos. Tateos. Translates to Thaddeus. Again, use this translation to pick between Ta or To. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Tateos. Tateos. So hopefully you use To for the Th sound, because in Armenian we don't have Th. So instead of the Th, we use the letter To. And then here we have the D sound, which in Western Armenian we use the T sound. So in Western Armenian, this letter Ta is pronounced with a T. But in Eastern Armenian, I want you to guess what the pronunciation is. So I'll pause the video and show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Da. Hopefully that was obvious. Now, the third letter of this group. So this name is pronounced Hofsapad. Hofsapad, which in English is Jehoshaphat, from Matthew chapter 1 verse 9. And I want you just to notice the last letter ends with a T. In Western Armenian, we use the D sound. Jehoshaphat, in Armenian, Hofsapad. And you also are getting a review. So F sound is replaced with a P with the letter pure. And then Sh is sometimes interchanged with S or Sh in Armenian. As we saw with the previous video with the name Simon or Shemavon, Simavon, etc. This next name is Matan. Matan, which in English is, I think, is Mathan or Matan or Mathan. Not sure, but the spelling can give us some clues to help us with the Armenian letters. And this name is from the Genealogy of Jesus, Matthew chapter 1 verse 15. So with those, let us identify the Armenian letters using Western pronunciation and guess the name. So remember with the letter To, we have used it in the past to replace the letter Th, which we don't have in Armenian. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Timotheos. Timotheos, which is Timothy. So the T letter was replaced with a D for Western Armenian, and then the Th was replaced with To. Again, because we don't have that in Armenian. And now we've covered the third letter of this group. So write it down in your table and let us proceed. Now write the following name in Armenian letters using Western pronunciation. And again, look at the translation to pick between Ta or To. And here we're referring to this, the equivalent of the T letter in Matteos. Matteos, which in English is Matthew. And here, when you're looking at the translation, you're looking more at the spelling rather than the English pronunciation to help you out. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. Matteos. Matteos. Okay, so I mentioned look at the spelling. So here we have two T's. You can think of this as Matthew, which is not how it's pronounced, of course, in English. But this can help us with the Armenian spelling. So the first T here is switched to a D. So we use this new letter that we've learned. And then the TH, the Th, is turned into a To. So for Western Armenian, this letter is called Jun, which gives a D sound. And now, guess the Eastern Armenian pronunciation. So pause the video and I'll show the solution in 3, 2, 1. So in Eastern, it's Jun, using an unaspirated T sound. And with that, we've covered the third group, which is the last group that we will cover today for those letters that are different between Eastern and Western Armenian. So just to review, we have the letter Ta, which gives a T sound, which in Western Armenian is equal to the To. But this letter, Jun, gives a D sound. For Eastern, however, this letter is Da, with a D sound. However, the letter Jun is an unaspirated T, which is different than the aspirated T of the letter To. Now let's also review the names. Here we have the name David. In Western Armenian, it's Tavit. In Eastern, it's David. Now, you might be wondering, how come we're using a T sound for the last letter of the name David when it ends with D? I'm not sure. Again, this is another one of those cases where I don't know the answer. But if someone does know, I would love to read about it in the comments. Then we have the name Judah or Jude, which in Western Armenian it's Huta. In Eastern Armenian, it's Huda. Then we have the name Adam. In Western Armenian, it's Atam. In Eastern Armenian, it's Adam. Then we have the name Andrew. In Western, Andreas. In Eastern, Andreas. Then we have the name Thaddeus, like Jude Thaddeus. Western, it's Tateos. In Eastern, it's Tadeusz. Then we have the name Jehoshaphat, which in Western Armenian, it's Hovsapad. In Eastern, it's Hovsapad. Then we have the name Matan, which in Western, it's Matan. In Eastern Armenian, it's Matan, which sounds identical, I think, because the T is preceded by a D, so it kind of sounds unaspirated anyway. Then we have the name Timothy. In Western Armenian, it's Timotheos. In Eastern, it's Timotheos. Then we have the name Matthew. In Western, it's Matteos. In Eastern, it's Matteos. Again, they sound identical because we have a T sound after the D. And with that, we've covered the third group. And so these are the letters that we have so far. And now let us look at the new letters in the Our Father. We have Hanabazort, which means daily. Then we have the name Dur, which means give. So this phrase, give us our daily bread, in classical Armenian, it's Ezhat mer Hanabazort dur mez aysor. Then we have the word Isbardis. So again, the za, if you remember, is the accusative to the word bardis, sins, or forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. In classical Armenian, it's Yevtog mez es bardis mer, or bes yevmek togum merot bardabanats. And then finally, we have the word danir, which means to lead, to send, or to give. So in English, and don't lead us into temptation. In classical Armenian, it's Yevmi danir es mezi portutun. So we're only a few words short from being able to read and pray the Lord's Prayer. Now for the Vochchun Kez Mariam, we have the word Deren, which is from the word Der, which means Lord, and Int, which means with. So in English, the Lord is with you. In Armenian, it's Deren Int Kez. Then we have the word Tu, which means you. So in English, blessed are you among women. In classical Armenian, it's Ornialies Tu Iganais. Then we have the word Beduch, which means fruit. So, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. In Armenian, it's Yev Orniale Beduch Forovainiko Jesus. And with that, we've reached the end of this video. This one was a bit longer, but I hope you still made it to the end. So as usual, let us end the video by asking the intercession of the Holy Translators with learning this new language and getting closer to Jesus Christ. And since we've been learning about the two different dialects, we can maybe also ask for the intercession of the Holy Translators to help us break the barriers that come in opposition of communication, as had happened on the day of Pentecost, ultimately to communicate the good news. Amen.